Week 1 of the fantasy football season is over and a lot just happened. In a lot of ways, everything has changed. And it's time for you to hit the waiver wire. So in this video, we're going to be breaking down the 7 running backs that you need to be looking for on your waivers to add right now. And if you're not familiar, I've helped over 15,000 people win their leagues the last few years alone, and I plan to do the same for you with this video. And we're going to start with the number 1 waiver wire add at the running back position, not overall, the running back position, because this is J.K. Dobbins of the Los Angeles Chargers, and I'm extremely happy for this guy because I may have been wrong about his 2024 season. Look, J.K. Dobbins has been through a lot when it comes to injuries for such a young running back who's still just 25 years old, and I have doubted him. And this is more so just a percentages game. How many guys are going to have an ACL tear in 2021? And not just an ACL tear, there's a couple other injuries that happened with this ACL tear. It was an MCL, an LCL, or a PCL. It was 3 different ligaments get injured. Then he comes back and he tweaks it. He tweaks it in week 6 of 2022. He's banged up. He finally gets healthy entering 2023, and he tears his Achilles, which is usually known as like a career ender, or if it's not a career ender for younger running backs like Dobbins was at just 24 years old, it usually sets you back 1 minimum, usually 2 years. So here I am saying, yeah, I'm not that excited about J.K. Dobbins. Neither were the Chargers, who only gave him $50,000 guaranteed, which is nothing in the NFL. And then I'm trying to read between the lines, not only with the guaranteed money they gave him, but anytime that they were asked this offseason, this is his new offensive coordinator, Greg Roman of the Chargers, anytime they were asked about Dobbins, it was never like overly exciting. It's just a matter of getting back up to speed physically, and hopefully we can get him there. Like they're saying, getting back up to speed. Hopefully. This is just weeks before the season started, and they're not saying he looks great. He's dominating out there. Can't believe this guy is so healthy. So you can see why some of my hesitations were there. But after week 1, and again, it's only week 1, so let's not get crazy, but J.K. Dobbins looked really good. I mean, this dude literally had 135 yards on 10 carries. He was averaging over 13 yards per carry. He had a 62-yard run in there, but even if you take that out, the guy's still averaging 6 to 7 yards a carry. He ends up catching all 3 of his targets. So in his first game back from a brutal injury, he has 13 touches. He averages about 13 yards per touch. He scores a touchdown. He's a top 5 running back at the position, and he's looking like he's going to be in a good situation moving forward with this Chargers offense. And according to PFF right here, you can see these are the snap counts in this first column right here, and then these are the routes run in the second column. So look at this. J.K. Dobbins plays 33 snaps. That is 9 more than Gus Edwards, and 33 out of 57 snaps. He's playing nearly 60% of the snaps in this game. Now, again, these guys saw similar snaps overall. Like Gus Edwards is still out there seeing nearly 40+ % of the snaps. And when we look at the carries, like, yes, both these guys had similar usage on the ground. J.K. Dobbins has 10 carries. Gus Edwards actually had more with 11 carries, but look at the production. 26 yards to 135. More than 5 times the amount of production. We know J.K. Dobbins from his time back at Ohio State, from his time at a smaller sample when he was actually healthy with the Ravens. He's a better pass catcher than one Gus Edwards, and a more dynamic player when he's actually healthy. It's also worth noting that only these 2 running backs in the Chargers backfield saw snaps in this game. Kamani Vidal, a late round pick who seems to have barely made the team, he was not healthy or active for this game. Not because he was injured, he was a healthy scratch, meaning the coaches said, nah, we'd rather roster somebody else, an extra kick returner or an extra defensive player than you. We feel pretty good about our 2 running backs, and the main one being J.K. Dobbins. And if we pull up a PFF helpful chart right here, you can see the ways that the running backs were actually used. The light blue here is Gus Edwards, the dark blue is J.K. Dobbins, and this is exactly where Gus or J.K. Dobbins took over on third downs. He played 11 out of 13, just 2 snaps on third downs for Gus Edwards. This is alluding to what I said earlier when J.K. Dobbins is a better pass catcher. Their early down usage was pretty split. So you can see right here, even on early downs, they were rotating, but it was really taking over in those third down situations. And my guess is if they actually had a 2-minute offense drill, which they did not have in this game, that would have been J.K. Dobbins out there, which means even more opportunities for checkdowns and fantasy production. So it's a pretty good spot for J.K. Dobbins, who, let me remind you, we've talked about this all offseason. He's running behind 3 first-round picks. First-round pick, top 5 tackle overall this year. Joe Alt, one of the best prospects we've seen at the position in quite some time. Rashawn Slater, a left tackle, another great overall prospect. He dealt with some injuries last year, but he's back. And then Zion Johnson. They literally have 3 first-round picks, and we know that this team wants to run the ball behind Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman, and that's exactly what they did in week 1, and it looks like the guy that they trust the most, at least when it comes to explosive plays, is going to be J.K. Dobbins. He is a must-add right now. He's available in more than 50% of fantasy leagues. Now, the next man I want to talk about is actually Tank Bigsby of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who is their running back too, a former 3rd-round pick from them in the 2023 draft, because he had surprising usage in week 1, and we could pull up that surprising usage with the Jaguars box totals here. Tank Bigsby, 12 carries. Travis Etienne, 12 carries. So they split the backfield carries 50-50 when you take out Trevor Lawrence's carry and a wide receiver in Devin Duvernay. But here's the big thing. On those 12 carries, Travis Etienne only gets 44 yards, 3.7 yards per carry, where Tank Bigsby, 73 yards with only a long run of 26, over 6 yards per carry. And look, this is just one game. It's just 12 carries. It's just a couple of drives for each guy. But the important part is Tank Bigsby looked a lot better than he did last year. Because Tank Bigsby last year was one of the worst running backs. And I'm not just saying that like just to say it. He was one of the worst running backs in the NFL. Look at this. this. He averaged 2.6 yards per carry. This dude last year, he ended up having 3 drops on only 4 targets. He dropped 75% of his targets. One of them went for a pick 6. It deflected off his hands and went for a pick 6. Literally dropped 75%. This is insane right here. And he only averaged 2.5 yards per carry. Like actually one of the worst running backs in the NFL, which is surprising why all off season, I was like, why are they hyping up Tank Bigsby, the head coach in this offense? And it wasn't just one time. Like head coach Doug Peterson starting back in the coaches and owners meetings in like February and March. I think Tank has a bigger role this year going into year 2. It's something that we were looking at. And the reason why that they were looking at it is because they wanted to keep Travis Etienne healthy. But this just continued. You can see Coach Speak Index is a great account here. He continues. I would consider knocking off a few of those reps down for one Travis Kelce or Travis Etienne, he's saying, and giving him to Tank Bigsby. He continues to talk even more about it. Like there's just so many samples, at least probably 4 samples from camp and the preseason and the offseason of Tank Bigsby getting hyped from his coach, and we saw that play out in week 1. Now, according to PFF's game logs right here, you can see he played just 17 snaps, Tank Bigsby, which is only 32% of the snaps, but he was able to handle 50% of the backfield carries like we showed you, these 12 and 12 splits here, and he was much more productive than Travis Etienne, and this is just a massive improvement over last season. I'm not saying that Travis Etienne isn't the starting running back still, but I'm thinking Travis Etienne, who at this time last year was seeing 80% of the snaps in backfield touches, that is obviously not the case this year. He's a much less valuable asset in fantasy, and if you took him in the second round, I'd be a little worried. What's also notable is that no other running back saw usage behind Tank Bigsby. Last year, we saw a good amount of Dearness Johnson get worked in, and it was kind of this backfield split behind Etienne, meaning Tank Bigsby was not all that valuable. They even drafted Keelan Robinson. He's on IR right now, so he's not somebody who's going to factor in, a late round rookie out of Texas. So right now, it looks like it's just these 2 guys, at least from week 1 usage. And if Tank Bigsby is going to week 1 see over 30% of the snaps, week 1 see 12 plus touches, 14 plus touches when you factor in his receiving game usage, I think if this gets to a 40% split, then Tank Bigsby quickly, especially if the Jags offense continues to look nice like it did in week 1, quickly Tank Bigsby is going to become somebody that is going to be one of the better handcuffs in fantasy. Because again, we can pull up these PFF usage charts for the running backs, and the most encouraging thing for Tank Bigsby was right here. Tank Bigsby's in blue, and the green is Travis Etienne. You can see the green, the 2-minute offense, that's all Travis Etienne. The third down's basically all Travis Etienne. This is what we expect. We still expect Etienne to be the pass catching back, or at least the primary back. But on the early downs, 13 early down snaps compared to 21 for Etienne. It was not a near split, but much closer than it was last year on early down usage. And here's the thing. If Tank Bigsby can just earn maybe a little bit of the third down usage, a goal line carry here or there, this is going to become a sketchy situation for Etienne. Maybe if you're an Etienne owner, you really try and add Tank Bigsby. Now, I do want to let you know that the waiver wire tools do drop today if you're watching this on Monday. Otherwise, they're already out for the week. This is a part of the Fantasy Blueprint. These are all the tools that you get and even more throughout the week. Also, access to my Discord where you can ask me questions. There's going to be rest of season rankings, projections and rankings, game-by-game matchup notes. These are all in the Fantasy Blueprint. Over 15,000 people have access. If you want access as well, do you want to win your league right here? Does this sound like you? You click this button right here, and it'll take you to a page where you can get access risk-free this year through one of my 2 Blueprint partners. Now, Sal, what does this all mean? Those are all the tools that you can get to help you win your league. I'll send you them every single week for the price of just $10 for the entire year. For the entire year, if you sign up through one of our 2 partners, and it is risk-free when you do that. And the reason why it's risk-free is because if you don't make your fantasy playoffs, I just 100% refund your payment, your minimum deposit through one of our partners of $10. Again, this is absolutely risk-free, and over 15,000 people, close to 16,000 people now are currently using these tools. They're the same tools I use. So you can scan the QR code on the screen to get access to the Fantasy Blueprint and the waiver wire tiers and rankings right now. We'll rank out every position. We'll give you a drops list as well and a whole bunch of more tools. You can join us all right here with the link in the description below or this QR code on the screen. Get it right now because this offer is going to be gone by the end of the month. Now, the next man up is Jordan Mason of the San Francisco 49ers, and I can't believe that this guy, as of this recording, is still available in over 60% of leagues. Now, here's the deal. I do have to come clean with you because I'm recording this on Monday, which makes sense because I'm trying to get the content out to you as soon as possible. And this team, the 49ers and Jordan Mason, play on Monday night, where Christian McCaffrey, currently, he's questionable, but he should be fine to play in week 1. He's dealing, though, not just with this calf injury that we've known about, but as far as I know, this Achilles injury is new as of the past week or something that he's dealing with in discomfort. And that's pretty scary if you drafted Christian McCaffrey with the number 1, number 2, or number 3 overall pick, that he's dealing with multiple injuries. And a calf strain is something that can usually lead to weaker different ligaments, like maybe your knee, your ankle, or also your hamstring even, or also your Achilles like we're seeing here. So is this something more concerning for McCaffrey? Whether McCaffrey plays or not tonight and Monday night, I think he'll play. Whether Jordan Mason sees a large role or not, I don't think that matters. I think the takeaway here is still that we need to be picking up Jordan Mason because McCaffrey is clearly more injury prone heading into this year than any of the last 2 or 3 seasons, I would say, in my opinion, because he's currently dealing with 2 injuries. And the competition behind McCaffrey is just Jordan Mason because the team put Elijah Mitchell on the long-term season-ending IR by the 49ers, and then there's really no other competition for Jordan Mason to be dealing with. I think McCaffrey plays on Monday night. Maybe I'm going to be completely wrong and he doesn't play. Again, regardless of what happens in that game, whether Jordan Mason sees 10 touches and McCaffrey is limited or Jordan Mason only sees 3 touches and McCaffrey is not limited, this is the number one handcuff in all of fantasy football if we're assuming guys like, David Montgomery is not a handcuff to Jahmyr Gibbs, as I wouldn't consider that. Because just one small injury to McCaffrey, even if he misses just 1 to 2 to 3 weeks, opens up the door for Jordan Mason, who his own head coach has been hyping up Jordan Mason this offseason. He said, I say nothing against Elijah Mitchell. There's been no fall off from Elijah, but JP is what they call Jordan Mason, runs at a very high level. He did a hell of a job for us last year, and we'll see how camp plays out. Well, camp played out with him being the running back 2 on this team, and it makes sense considering what he's done in a small sample in the NFL. In his first season on 40 rush attempts or 43 rush attempts, he averaged 6 yards per carry. Last year, he averaged 5.2 yards per carry. What type of running back is Jordan Mason? He's a bruiser. He's 223 pounds. He's not your typical Kyle Shanahan back. 223 pounds, can break tackles, and he's very efficient, can pick up yards. Really, if you're just a guy who can hold on to the football, has decent vision, and if you have size or strength like you have, and even speed like Jordan Mason has, you're going to fit really well into the San Francisco 49ers run blocking unit, especially since offensive tackle Trent Williams signed his deal, and he's going to be back. So in total, Jordan Mason is somebody who has 83 career carries and has averaged 5.6 yards per carry in his career thanks to his 223-pound frame. He is a solid player on this small sample. And when I'm trying to look and see where the potential competition, if a McCaffrey went down, like would it be a full workhorse backfield or a split backfield, because we want it to be a workhorse backfield for Mason to be valuable, I really don't see where the competition is going to come from. 2 rookies in Isaac Correndo, who the team multiple times this offseason has said doesn't look NFL ready, you can say. Well, maybe they haven't said that. They've said he's looked raw, which is kind of translation reading between the lines, has a long way to go. He's also dealing with a hamstring injury in camp. Cody Schrader, who was one of the better overall football players last year, but did go to or had weaker competition, you can say. But outside of that, a fullback, Patrick Taylor, who's just bounced around practice squads, never really been fully into the offense. I think Jordan Mason at 223 pounds, somebody Kyle Shanahan seems to like, is a clear RB1 if something happens to Christian McCaffrey, even if it's just for a week of the season, which means that you should be adding Jordan Mason in not just one of your fantasy leagues, every single fantasy league he's available. He's a priority ad right now. Next up is going to be Ty Chandler, the Minnesota Vikings running back. He's available in 70% of leagues right now, and in my opinion, that's absolutely criminal, not critical, but also critical, because look, Ty Chandler, we know who this guy is. Last year, he was great for the Vikings. He averaged over 5 yards per touch, and he had 1 start last year, and he got over 150 total yards, yet this guy's available in 70% of leagues. Now, look, this first game for Ty Chandler isn't going to get him a new girlfriend or anything crazy like that. Like, he did have 11 touches, which is encouraging, just 42 yards. The guy wasn't going anything crazy, right? 11 touches, 42 yards, 3.5 yards per touch, just 7 fantasy points. When you compare that to his new teammate, Aaron Jones, who goes out there in his NFL or his Vikings debut, puts up 19 fantasy points, has 16 total touches between his rushing and receiving. He has 94 yards just on the ground alone, tops 100 total yards, scores a touchdown. This is a guy in Aaron Jones who we've been saying all offseason, as long as he's healthy, he's going to be a top 20 back week in and week out. And this past week, he finished as a top 10 back because, again, he was healthy. And this is what you should have expected this offseason when the Vikings signed Aaron Jones. A day after their division rivals, the Packers, cut him. Ty Chandler went to being the RB2 on the team with a lot of upside. But the reason why we like Ty Chandler all offseason is because of the upside if something happens to a nearly 30-year-old Aaron Jones. He turns 30 this year, not week 1. We know Aaron Jones is going to be healthy week 1. All the reports, there was no reports about an injury. So if he's coming into week 1 healthy, he was a dynamic player last year. We think he's going to be pretty solid as long as his offensive line, which is good with Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill, can protect for him. But as I mentioned, Aaron Jones is an older back. He's turning 30 years old in December, and this is just week 1. This is not the week we're expecting him to get injured. And knock on wood, he doesn't get injured all year long, but this is a guy who dealt with injuries for more than half the season last year, missed 6 total games, was on the injury report for 11 weeks. So it wouldn't be shocking to see him yet again deal with some injuries as he approaches age 30. This is just kind of what happens once they start these soft tissue injuries. They continue for older backs, especially ones that rely on some bursts. And that's the whole reason why we wanted Ty Chandler. But then we saw some encouraging stuff that we'll discuss in a second in week 1, including Sam Darnold and his Vikings offense actually looking good. And some of that encouraging usage brings us to the PFF running back usage chart. As you can see right here, you're going to get the green being Ty Chandler, the dark green, and the light blue being Aaron Jones. Look at the early downs. Ty Chandler's seen 17 early down snaps, where Aaron Jones sees 21. So these guys on early downs, first and second down, are basically splitting the backfield touches. What was the difference here? Well, you got the goal line work. That was Aaron Jones. The 2-minute offense was Aaron Jones, and that's probably the most important. But even the third downs, look at the third downs. They were completely split. It depended who was on the field for that drive. So basically, it was Ty Chandler seeing a split on the third downs and the early down usage, and the 2-minute offense going to Aaron Jones. But for the most part, it was Aaron Jones playing like 2 drives, or you could say 3 drives, and then Ty Chandler playing 2. They were kind of rotated in that type of regard, which means Ty Chandler has a good role already in this offense. Like right now, week in and week out, I think you could feel pretty confident about Ty Chandler seeing 8 to 12 touches, with the upside of then having a full-time role of 16 plus touches if Aaron Jones was to miss time, because he has no competition behind him. A fullback and CJ Ham, Kenny Ngannou, who's mostly just been a special teams player in his career, and Myles Gaskin, who's like an okay player in the NFL, has bounced around, a former late round pick, I think a 7th round pick maybe from years ago, but for the most part, it'll be the full Ty Chandler backfield, assuming they don't bring in somebody off the streets like a Leonard Fournette or something like that if something did happen to Aaron Jones. So right now we're getting Ty Chandler on early downs, and there's a chance that on those early downs, or at least his drives, he could be on the field in the red zone. That's where the touchdowns come from, and a flex upside comes from. But right now, you want to be adding him, available in 70% of leagues. And the next guy you want to be adding, and if his offense just looked a little bit better on Sunday, I would say he's a priority ad, like right up there with J.K. Dobbins. It's going to be Jaleel McLaughlin, the 24-year-old second-year player, former undrafted free agent rookie for the Denver Broncos. Because we got the answers we needed in week 2. He's the clear running back 2 in the Denver Broncos, and honestly, he factored in as like a 1A, 1B with Javonte Williams. And you can see that right here in the snap counts from PFF. He played 24 of 69 snaps. Now, that's only 35% of the snaps compared to Javonte Williams playing more than 50% with these 36 snaps right here. But the more important thing was the touches in this game. You can see right here, Jaleel McLaughlin, and we'll scroll all the way down to it right now, and we'll keep scrolling all the way down. Jaleel McLaughlin gets 15 touches in this game on his 35% of the snaps. 10 carries, 5 receptions. Now overall, look at this. Just 28 total yards between rushing and receiving. So 15 touches for 28 yards is brutal. Trust me, again, that's not all on him. That's the overall offensive design for this game. But McLaughlin's teammate and the lead back in this game snaps-wise, Javonte Williams, wasn't much better. Between his 8 carries and his 1 reception, he only totaled 23 total yards. So both these guys are only going out there and averaging, like, maybe, if they're lucky, 2 yards per touch in this game, which tells me, you know what, it's probably not the running backs. It's probably something going on with the general offense, and that's what we can look at. And what do you know? When your quarterback throws 42 times and only goes for 138 yards, 3.3 yards per attempt, I mean, some of the worst quarterback play we saw on Sunday was out of guys like Deshaun Watson, was out of guys like Daniel Jones, and also Bo Nix. Bo Nix looked terrible. Nobody outside of the quarterback going for over 30 rushing yards. Only one receiver, and it's Josh Reynolds of all people, not the most dynamic player, going over 40 receiving yards. This offense looked really rough, and it was pretty easy for Seattle's front to just say, you know what, we're probably going to not let you get the ball going on the ground because we don't trust your quarterback. We're going to load the box, and that's exactly what happened. Now the concern is, shouldn't this just keep happening moving forward? Yes, but from week 1 to week 2, we hope to see massive adjustments in the NFL like we usually do, especially for a rookie quarterback. If we pull up the PFF running back usage charts right here, some great charts over there at PFF that you should check out. You can see Jaleel McLaughlin is in blue. Jaleel McLaughlin actually played more early down snaps than the light blue right here in Javonte Williams. Now the difference was Javonte ended up playing on most of the third downs and the 2-minute offense. But here's the deal. Jaleel McLaughlin's profile, he's somebody who does play on third downs, does play in the 2-minute offense. He can catch passes. He's an extremely dynamic player. So if he's already getting the early down usage, like we showed you right here in these PFF charts, getting majority 19 out of compared to 15 for Javonte early down snaps, he can start to steal some of this 2-minute offense and third down work. I'm pretty certain of that because we know he's a talented player from his past stops in both college and last year as a rookie in the NFL. Let me discuss. Last season in the NFL, this guy literally ranked top 5 in yards per touch, number 4 in true yards per carry. He led all of college football. He has like the college football rushing record for all-time rushing yards, which is crazy. He was 6th in breakaway tackle rate last year. This is a guy who can contribute in all areas, and we even saw his own head coach, Mr. Sean Payton, hyping this guy up. We'll find those touches for him. I think that's going to be important. This was last year during his rookie season. This offseason, he continued to hype up Jaleel McLaughlin. Jaleel's the first one in the practice facility. He's looking great, all this stuff. And now McLaughlin looks like the clear running back 2 on this team. A team that cut veteran Samaje Perine, and that would be the role that McLaughlin should earn more work in, those third downs and 2-minute offense. They have a 5th-round rookie that really did not play much in this game at all. Jaleel McLaughlin was clearly ahead of him, and McLaughlin was already pushing Javonte Williams, who has not been the same since that multi-ligament knee injury that he suffered not last year, but the year before. So right now, the way that I'm looking at it, I do think the priority ad would be J.K. Dobbins, but if you wanted to put number 2 as Jaleel McLaughlin, I couldn't argue with you on that one. Next up, we're going to go to the Tampa Bay Bucks backfield and look at their 4th-round rookie, 22-year-old Bucky Irving out of Oregon, and let's see what he did in his NFL debut. In Bucky's NFL debut, he puts up about 10 fantasy points or so, but more importantly, he has 9 rush attempts for 62 yards, and he adds 2 receptions for 14 yards, so this guy goes for 76 total yards on 11 touches, averaging 7 yards per touch, and again, 9 carries for 62 yards on the ground is highly impressive considering when we compare him to what his own teammate, Rachaad White, did, 15 carries, 31 yards, barely averaging 2 yards per touch. The saving grace for Rachaad White, his receptions, his receiving usage, 6 catches, 75 yards, always been been a good pass catcher, but here's the deal. Rachaad White was inefficient all year last year, and he just didn't have anybody to push him for touches. But if Bucky Irving can do what he did in week 1 for some parts of the season, if not all the season, be efficient, well, then we're going to have problems for Rachaad White, who last year only averaged 3.5 yards per touch on his massive workload, and now he might actually have some competition in a Bucky Irving, who, look, I wasn't the biggest hype piece on, or I wasn't somebody who was like high on a Bucky Irving because of his size, 5'9", 192 pounds, but also his athleticism. The guy ran a 4.55, which is great if it's me, but for a guy who's 192 pounds, you need to see this number being closer to the low 4.4s, definitely even the 4.3s for a lot of guys his size. So if we're talking about Bucky Irving compared to other NFL running backs, we're looking at a guy who's relatively smaller and relatively much slower. So how are you going to win in between the tackles and out wide? That was my personal concerns, but in week 1, we saw him do well in between the tackles. And we know this guy can catch passes. That was his calling card in college, 31 catches, 53 catches last year at Oregon. Now, there are some things to be said about Oregon with Bo Nix last year, just checking it down to the running back position and how real are these receptions when you have 53 for just 395 yards. I think there's something to that. That's okay to ask those questions. But again, it's just a 9-carry sample in the NFL from week 1. We did see some good things. How will he hold up throughout the season? If he does continue to be efficient and effective, it's going to be hard for the coaches to ignore that if Rachaad White continues to play poorly. So it's important that we continue to see this 11-touch sample increase moving forward with some good production on those touches, and maybe by like week 3, week 4, week 5, we start seeing a larger role for Bucky Irving. So right now would be the time to stash him in your deeper leagues, because the encouraging piece of news is that Sean Tucker, the running back 3 here, only saw 2 snaps in this game, as you can see on PFF, compared to 20 for Bucky Irving, when the coach this past week, the offensive coordinator Liam Cohen, kind of hinted that Sean Tucker could be involved. He wasn't, just 2 touches, seeing no real work here when Bucky Irving was seeing snaps and meaningful touches in this game. So if there's a name to mention from this Bucks backfield, it would be Bucky Irving as somebody, maybe not as a priority ad right now, but if you're in a deeper league, definitely somebody to be stashing if you have the bench spot. Now, somebody I don't really think you have to add, but he's worth talking about because of his week 1 usage and overall production, is Alexander Mattison, who actually played in week 1, if we pull up right here on PFF, played more snaps than Zamir White. 36 snaps compared to 23 for Zamir White. So 13 more snaps than Zamir White, but there's a couple of reasons for this. Vegas, the Las Vegas Raiders, were trailing for most of the game by not 1, but 2 scores to the Los Angeles Chargers. And if we pull up PFF's usage charts right here, it just meant that there was more spots where they had to get a passing down back on the field. The light blue is Alexander Mattison. He saw all the third down snaps. He saw 10 out of 11 2-minute drill offense snaps, so that's the concern. It was still Zamir White playing the short yardage, seeing the early down usage compared to Alexander Mattison, but Mattison was put on in the 2-minute offense and third downs. And look, this team might be trailing a lot this year because in week 1, spoiler alert, they only put up 10 points against the Chargers defense that's not known to be the best. Now, in my opinion, this absolutely crushes the upside of a Zamir White. We already kind of knew that coming into the season. We were just hoping for like these 14 to 16 plus carry games on the ground, but if he's not going to see any passing game usage, and they trust Mattison like they did in week 1 in that role, and they drafted a late round rookie running back in Dylan Laub, who's a good pass catcher, that's a concern if Mattison's going to be this 2-minute drill back, because it just absolutely crushes the upside of getting, 2-3 catches a game from Zamir White, which really sets him apart compared to other running backs of his profile, like a Devin Singletary, who went multiple rounds later in fantasy drafts. Now, as for Mattison, I don't think he's a priority ad because the dude himself only put up 5 carries for like 19 yards on the ground. He wasn't efficient either as a runner. And we kind of know that to be the case for him. That's why the Vikings cut him, and we're going to go with Ty Chandler until they signed Aaron Jones, like we discussed earlier, but they cut him because he was just insanely inefficient last season. Now, if you were to just look at his game logs, over 16 fantasy points, people who search the waiver wire and just search by fantasy points, they're going to be like, oh my God, we got to pick this guy up. But again, 5 carries for 19 yards. The big thing here was he had 4 catches, 43 yards, and a touchdown on 6 targets. But the team was trailing, so they threw a lot. The 6 targets isn't anything that crazy in my opinion. And out of these 43 yards, 31 of them came on a long touchdown throw. I don't think every single week you're going to get a 30-plus yard touchdown throw to a running back. So outside of that, you're looking at a guy who's going to see 6, 7 touches in a bad offense for a player who's not efficient. I'm not trying to add him. Like, you can expect a couple more decent weeks probably from Mattison, but for the most part, this is still Zamir White's backfield on early downs. Worst case scenario, it becomes a split backfield in an offense that you're really not all that excited about between an inefficient running back, Alexander Mattison, and whatever Zamir White is. We'll see as the season goes on. Now, there are some other names that I do think, especially when we're talking about strategy, putting guys in your IR spot, that you need to know about, but I want to let you know that almost 70% of you are not subscribed to this here YouTube channel. I watch YouTube all the time, and I'm not subscribed to a lot of people, but when they tell me to subscribe, I do. It's a gentleman's agreement. So that's what I'm going to do right here, is to ask you guys to subscribe to this channel. Just double check that you are subscribed. It literally takes 2 seconds, and it honestly goes so far. You have no idea how much it benefits me and this channel. It lets me put out even more content, get more editors, so I appreciate you all a ton. Now, some of those players I want to talk about, some quick hitters. Justice Hill is a guy who had a lot of receptions in the Ravens season opener against the Chiefs, but how many times the Ravens are going to be losing this year? They are only expected to be underdogs in 2 more games this season, so I don't know how much that's really going to matter. His role, the guy that's more important in my opinion, is his teammate who is out right now, and that's Keaton Mitchell, who's on the IR, but this is one of the best, or the PUP list, this is one of the best strategies in all of fantasy. Pick up this guy in Keaton Mitchell, who's dynamic, and we'll talk about it in a second, and just place him in your IR spot right now. He's available in over 90% of fantasy leagues. Pick him up and put him in your IR spot. Because this dude literally came off the PUP list last year and led the NFL in true yards per carry. Yes, more than Devon Achane, but 7.1 yards per carry. More yards per touch, 8.7 yards per touch than Devon Achane last year. He was fantastic. He was number 2 in fantasy points per opportunity last season. That's how good he was. I mean, this is a guy who came out of the draft, ran a 4.3, started the season last year in the PUP list, and then returned and came back mid-season and was absolutely dynamic until getting injured. So a lot of people just kind of forget his production. This is, let's just say, Devon Achane light on 90% of waiver wires right now, and it's like nobody even cares. In an offense that wants to run the ball with the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson, they want to run the ball. Look, either something could happen to Derrick Henry this year and he misses time, or Mitchell returns from the PUP list and looks like his same old self. If either of those things happen, Mitchell will be a priority ad that you can just put in your IR spot right now. Now, one more name that I do have to mention is Zach Charbonnet, because his running back backmate, who looked great in week 1, and Kenneth Walker, and Zach Charbonnet looked good as well, he hurt his abdomen. He said that he's good after the game, but that's just after the game. His abdomen could be his core, like a hernia, which is something, a sports hernia that Kenneth Walker has dealt with in the past, having surgery on that. So we're really going to have to track the practice reports throughout the week on this abdomen right here, because again, I don't trust him just saying that he's good. He knows his body. I'm not doubting that. Like, I'm not going to be an idiot and say this guy doesn't know his body, but also, like, what do you feel like tomorrow when you wake up? Is it some sort of sports hernia? If it is, then he's going to miss multiple weeks. And if that was to be the case, again, we don't know this as of right now, but if that was to be the case, then Zach Charbonnet becomes a number 1 waiver wire ad, available in over 75-ish% of leagues right now. So just keep an eye on this. Maybe you pick up Zach Charbonnet just in case as the practice reports go on this week. And if it looks like Kenneth Walker's healthy, then you can just cut Charbonnet. But I will say Charbonnet did have a decent game himself in week 1 on a per touch basis, and that Seattle offense looked pretty good under Ryan Grubb. The one concern would be the offensive line, which was the concern coming into the season. It was the concern last year, and it looked pretty bad in pass protection in week 1 for Seattle. So that's also something to keep in mind. But these have been the running backs that you need to be adding in your fantasy leagues before week 1. I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to subscribe. Now, if you want to see the wide receivers, that's going to come out later in the week. And once it's out on Tuesday, it will pop up right over here. So I'll see you all in the next one. Best of luck, and go hit up those waiver wires right now. What are you waiting for?